Good evening. You are tuning in to AWANI Tonight with me, Cynthia Ng. Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim has called for Malaysians to set aside ego and family interests for the sake of building a strong nation. He said this in his Eid al-Adha message on Facebook. The Prime Minister also said that it was important to unite and move forward together towards a nation that is developed, prosperous and compassionate to its people. Anwar also wished Malaysians in Mecca a blessed Hajj and safe journey home. Face masks will no longer be mandatory on public transportation and at healthcare facilities from July 5th. However, Health Minister Dr. Zaliha Mustafa says those who test positive for COVID-19 and healthcare workers will still be required to wear them.
It is still highly encouraged for high-risk individuals such as senior citizens, those with low immunity and chronic diseases, as well as expectant mothers to continue wearing masks. Mask wearing was also recommended for this group of people in crowded areas with poor ventilation and commuters on public transportation. Dr. Zaliha also said that effective July 5th, the isolation period for COVID-19 patients will be reduced from 7 to 5 days from the onset of symptoms. Despite the relaxed SOPs, the declaration of Malaysia as an infected local area under the Prevention of Infectious Diseases Act, which was set to end on June 30th, would be extended for another 6 months.
Malaysians must soon obtain a travel document known as the European Travel Information and Authorization System before entering any of the European Union nations. The new requirements will take effect starting next year. The authorization will be linked to the traveller's passport and will be valid for 3 years or until the passport's expiry date. With it, Malaysians can stay in Europe for a maximum of 90 days within a 180-day period. According to the EU's website, it is not a visa requirement and is only meant to keep a record of who enters and leaves the Schengen zone. It also does not guarantee entry upon arrival, and travellers will still be subject to passport and other document checks by border guards. The application process must be done online and will cost €7 or 36 ringgit for all applicants between the ages of 18 and 70. Meanwhile, minors and applicants over 70 years old will receive the authorization free of charge. The government has agreed in principle to establish a gig economy commission that aims to prioritize the well-being of all participants across the entire economic chain, from service providers to suppliers and up to workers and consumers. We speak to Centre for Market Education's Dr. Carmelo Ferlito to understand what it takes for this commission to effectively uplift the gig economy.
So I think that behind the idea of the Commission, there is the need to address some sort of protection for the riders. Is going to be effective or not? The Commission, that is another kind of discussion. Or if, of course, there are always trade-offs involved. And my main concern at this regard is that the ratio, the reason d'etre behind the gig economy is flexibility. But of course, it's always a matter of trade-off. You pay this flexibility that you have and you don't have in a traditional job with some sort of less protection. So you probably don't have access to regular EPF payments, medical coverage, SOCSO, and etc. So while I think I understand the need for a sort of regulation there, for a sort of intervention, we have also to make sure that by intervening, we don't destroy the advantage behind the gig economy, so the flexibility, because if the gig economy becomes over-regulated, then we are probably destroying the entire ecosystem. So I think that the attempt there is to find a very delicate balance between the need that is there of some regulation and they need also not to destroy the main feature, the competitive advantage of the gig economy, which is flexibility.
Carmelo urges the Commission to play the role as facilitator to assist in discussions between gig workers and stakeholders.
The system that the Commission can bring is indeed to bring all the parties together at the same table. Because here there are not only the platform and the workers, but also in the case of food, the restaurants. I heard a lot of restaurant owners saying that basically with the percentage that the platform takes, they are giving out most of their margin. So during the pandemic, some restaurants refused to go in the platform because it was more convenient to remain closed rather than working by using one of these platforms. So I think because of the way in which platforms have been developed and platforms have been increasing very fast through the contingent situation of lockdowns, parties have never had the chance to properly discuss for mutually beneficial agreements. And indeed, if the Commission would play the role of being a facilitator for bringing the parties together, would be quite a good achievement already.
Let's go for a quick break. Stay tuned for more. Welcome back. 40,000 police officers will be deployed across France to deal with protests sparked by the fatal police shooting of a 17-year-old driver. President Emmanuel Macron, who held a crisis meeting today over the incident, has condemned the unrest. At least 180 people have also been arrested following a second night of riots in which protesters launched fireworks at offices in the town of Nanterre, where the teen was shot dead during a traffic stop.
Local media reported protesters setting cars ablaze and torching public buildings in other towns and suburbs around the capital. Unrest was also observed in other areas across France, including the northern cities of Lille and Amiens, along with Dijon in the east and Toulouse in the south. The Interior Ministry said dozens of police officers were injured during the clashes. Meanwhile, the officer accused of the killing was being held in custody on suspicion of manslaughter and could face preliminary charges within this week. The incident marks the third fatal shooting during a police traffic stop in France this year, down from a record 13 last year.
Presumed human remains were recovered from the wreckage of the Titan submersible that imploded during a dive to the Titanic wreckage. The U.S. Coast Guard says it will transport the evidence to a U.S. port for medical professionals to conduct further analysis and testing on the remains.
5 major pieces of the sub, including a titanium end cap and the vessel's porthole with the window missing, have been found near the bow of the Titanic. Earlier in the day, debris recovered from the small submersible, about the size of an SUV, was offloaded in eastern Canada. All 5 people on board the Titan presumably died instantly when it imploded under the immense pressure of the North Atlantic at a depth of more than 3.2 kilometers. Chair of the Coast Guard's Marine Board of Investigation, Captain Jason Neubauer, said there was still a substantial amount of work to be done to determine the cause of the sub's loss and to prevent a similar tragedy from occurring again.
More than a third of the U.S. population is under unhealthy air quality alert as smoke from Canadian wildfires hits parts of the country once again. Cities such as Chicago, Detroit and Minneapolis remain among the top 5 places in the world with the worst air quality as of Wednesday evening. Alerts were issued for the entire states of New York, Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois and Michigan, among others. Residents are being advised to stay indoors with their air conditioning running or, in some areas, to wear N95 masks if they have to be outside. Some improvement in the air quality is expected on Thursday, particularly over the Great Lakes area, where rain and storms are forecast to cleanse the air. A similar wildfire smoke blanketed the Northeast just weeks ago. Wildfires have burned a record of more than 19.5 million acres across Canada this year alone. There are nearly 500 active blazes throughout the country, with over 250 deemed out of the control by the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre. Beginning Saturday, New Zealand says it will become the first country to ban the thin plastic bags that supermarket customers use to collect their fruits and vegetables. The new ban will also extend to plastic straws and silverware as the government expands a campaign against single-use plastics it started in 2019. The government had banned the thicker plastic bags used by shoppers to carry their groceries, opting instead for reusable bags. According to the country's Environment Ministry, the 2019 bag ban has already prevented more than 1 billion plastic bags from being used in New Zealand. And the new ban on thin plastic bags would lead to a further reduction of 150 million bags a year. Supermarkets would still sell reusable bags for produce, but businesses could be fined if found to be breaking the new rules. Billionaire Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic is aiming to launch its first ever commercial space flight service this evening. The flight, named Galactic 01, carrying 4 passengers and 2 pilots, will lift off from the Spaceport America in New Mexico at 11 p.m. Malaysian time. The flight will last 90 minutes and will take the crew on a suborbital journey about 80 kilometers above the New Mexico desert. The passengers, which include 2 Italian Air Force officers and an aerospace engineer, will experience a few minutes of weightlessness and will be able to see the curvature of the planet during their journey. Galactic 01 will also carry 13 experiments to collect medical and cosmic radiation data and study fluid dynamics. Virgin Galactic is one of a handful of private companies, including Elon Musk's SpaceX and Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin, that caters to individuals willing to pay large sums of money to experience space flight. Since 2005, Virgin Galactic has sold about 800 tickets for its commercial flights, with the first batch going for $200,000 each. Tickets now cost $450,000 per person. A 28-year-old chimpanzee who was caged her entire life saw the open sky for the first time in a heartwarming video captured at her new home in Florida. Vanilla, the rescued chimp, spent years at a New York medical research lab where primates were often housed in small cages. In a video released by animal welfare group Save the Chimps, Vanilla can be seen jumping down from a doorway and hugging another chimpanzee called Dwight before looking up at the sky with her eyes wide open. She was then led by the other chimpanzees to explore the open spaces of her new sanctuary, a 3-acre home. Vanilla and her sister Shake had recently arrived at Save the Chimps, a privately funded sanctuary in Florida that is currently home to more than 220 rescued chimpanzees. She had to quarantine before slowly being introduced into the larger family groups. Vanilla was born into captivity at the New York lab specializing in HIV and hepatitis research. The U.S. had banned medical research on chimpanzees in 2015. That wraps up AWANI Tonight, and on behalf of AWANI Tonight, we want to wish you Selamat Hari Raya Aidiladha from all of us here. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching and good night.
and good evening. I'm Melissa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. In the World Bank's most recent report on women, business and the law in 2021, one of the main findings was that, on average, women have just 3/4 of the legal rights afforded to men. Now, discriminatory laws, particularly family law, underpin the unequal treatment of women in society. And so one of the pathways to achieving gender equality is through family law reform. Joining me on the show to discuss this further is Zareen Zafril. She's the Executive Director of Musawa, which is a global movement for equality and justice in the Muslim family and in family law. Zareen, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's good of you to be here. I appreciate your